Right here is Raul Mulpuri. He's the CEO of View. It's based in Milpitas, California, and his company has invented this thing, which is a window glass that automatically changes tints throughout the day based on the amount of solar radiation that is hitting the glass. And there's a thin film on here that he'll demonstrate for us. So Raul has raised, more than $300 million in financing so far for his company, and is already working with the glass giant Corning to develop this technology. Next we have John Spirk. He is the co-founder of Cleveland-based Nottingham Spirk. This company is considered the most successful innovation lab of the past generation. John and his partner John Nottingham have worked for clients such as Procter & Gamble, Hoover, Sherwin-Williams, Gojo, and Mars, and they've invented dozens of commonplace products such as the duct tape brand, Purell hand sanitizer, the Swiffer Sweeper Vac, Crest Spin Brush, Dirt Devil vacuum, and they've even invented what is the highest selling car of all time. Does anyone know what that is? Who here has kids and has bought them a Little Tikes car to ride on the driveway? These guys invented the Little Tikes car, and my understanding is that more units of that have been sold than anything else. Right. So altogether, their innovations have sold about $50 billion over the years. We also have Chuck Svoboda. He is a longtime CEO of Cree. You may have seen the Cree commercials on TV within the last year. They've reinvented the light bulb. They've taken LED technology and created a light bulb that looks just like the old Edison light bulbs that we know and love, and the light from these bulbs is almost indistinguishable from incandescence. They're available exclusively at Home Depot, and so it's an amazing innovation that will save a lot of electricity for the country. So welcome to you guys. I'd like to start off by asking you guys, what is the most important innovation that you've ever created in your career? And let's start with John, because he's got the longest list.
Thank you. I'll give you a two-part answer to that, okay? Because we've been around a long time. Back in the late 90s and early 2000s, we identified an opportunity which was powered toothbrush. At the time, it cost you between $50 and $100 to buy a powered toothbrush. You had the Sonicare, Interplaque, things like that. You certainly would never give that device to a child to drop on the bathroom floor and have to replace. So what our team did was to look at how could we create a quality product that could be delivered to the consumer at a $5 retail. And we set about the development of that with some partners and investors and accomplished that. At the time, powered brushing was used by about 1% of the market. Today it's about 37%. And that's one of the things we take great pride in is, as far as creating and improving oral care in America, because it's in the hands of everyone. If I asked any of you in the audience if you use a powered toothbrush, I would like to see a show of hands of those who don't. Okay.
Sorry.
It happens. We'll get you. But that was looking back. Looking ahead, one of the things that we're very excited about, you hear a lot of conversation these days about healthcare. We have created, again, with a brilliant software person and a great team, something called HealthSpot. And if you go on healthspot.net, you'll see the product. It's a telemedicine kiosk. It's the way of the future. It has high-def digital instruments that can probably deliver 15 out of the maybe 18 things that you would go to a doctor's office or an emergency room for. So this is what we think is really a huge opportunity going forward.
So you can have your doctor 1,000 miles away, but by
Right.
sitting in this kiosk and being able to look at them through a screen like as if on Skype,
Exactly.
they can diagnose what ails you and write prescriptions that you can fill at that location.
Instantly.
That's cool. I hope it happens. How about you, Chuck?
Well, for us, it's pretty simple. It's the Cree LED Bulb. And I say that, although after working at Cree for more than 20 years now, it's really a material science company. We did amazing science, and I would have thought it was going to be one of those things. And what you'll learn along the way is that the science is amazing internally, but if you can learn to find a way to connect it and make it real to the average consumer. And that's been the challenge of the last year. And what we learned with the Cree LED bulb is it's that ability to not just make a cool product, it is cool and it's fun to be able to sell it to people, but we're changing a 130-year-old industry. So the fundamentals of lighting have not changed since Thomas Edison invented the light bulb 130 years ago. And so it's this ability to bring all this really high-tech stuff together in a very simple form factor. It really just does look like a regular LED bulb. And I hate to say it, but that was the big innovation, to make it look like a bulb. And then, as something John said earlier, what you learn is when you do that, you have to also make sure that it works as good or better than what they have, because you cannot fall down on delivering the expectation of the consumer. And so it was that idea to make it look like one and to also give them the ability to have it work just like one. And so the ability to change how people think about light, it's been the biggest deal. I probably think too much about technology, but when you invent the bulb, or we try to reinvent the bulb, you think about Thomas Edison. And he has many famous quotes, but he said something in one of his writings, which was, I invented thousands of things, and when I knew it was real, is when I could convince people to buy it. Mm-hmm. And it was interesting, even for an inventor of his incredible success, he knew it was commercial success that changed that. And so that's been the most fun for us.
Hey, it's not enough that your bulb saves an awful lot of electricity. What's the breakdown again for an old 60-watt incandescent bulb? It might cost $1, but it'll use how much electricity a year? So
what most people don't realize, because we've been trained to think light bulbs are just there, is that your light bulb at 60 watt lasts about a year and uses about $7 of electricity on average in the country. An LED light bulb will last for over 10 years and it uses about $1.
Wow.
And so at $10, you get your money back in about a year and a half. What's amazing is most people just don't believe it. And that's really been the key to this innovation, is really starting that conversation. And frankly, most people here, I'd be curious, who here has tried an LED bulb? Oh, this is great. I like this crowd. And for those of you who haven't, if you want to keep wasting money, let me know. Otherwise, try our bulbs.
So it's a no-brainer innovation that has a very, very quick return on investment. Everyone should be doing it. But what really hooked me is that I tried all these LED bulbs, and yours, it's not exactly like an incandescent, but it's getting pretty close, and it's getting better all the time, right? So your goal is to eventually make it indistinguishable from the soft, warm glow that we're used to from incandescents.
Yeah, the basic idea is if we put our bulb in a lamp next to an identical one with your 60-watt bulb and you can tell the difference, we haven't done our job. And I'd say we're getting very close to where well over 90% of people today can't see the difference, and that's frankly what we're trying to do. It's got to be, look, it's a light bulb. If it's not good at giving you light, what's the point of it? And so I think that's really what we've tried to bring to the consumer, and so far it's great to see people starting to embrace new technology.
Definitely. Okay, Raul, what is this thing?
Okay, so
can everyone see this, by the way?
Yeah, I'll lift it up in a second. Right. So I've worked on many innovative things, mostly in the semiconductor industry, as a result of which our kids can play games a little faster, our displays are a little bit clearer, and so on. But perhaps the most impactful thing that I've worked on is really this. And it's not just me. We have a team of about 300 people in the company, and we've been laboring away at this for about 6 years. So let's talk about the problem statement for a second. So we have windows in our buildings, whether it's homes or offices or places we work, so we can stay connected to the outside. Glass is an amazing material in that it is solid. It keeps you separated from the elements in terms of dust and wind and the harmful things outside, yet it keeps you connected. You can see through it. It's a very unique material. And we as humans have learned to build with it. And in fact, we put more and more glass, and we're putting more and more clearer glass in our buildings, floor-to-ceiling windows. It's because we crave that view and natural light. Turns out bunkers are actually cheaper to build and more energy efficient. People always tell me how, it's about efficiency. Well, it's not. It's about human well-being first while being efficient. So the problem statement with windows is sometimes you have too much light and too much heat coming through. If you're facing in North America, east or south or west, you know exactly what I mean. Then what we do is we use blinds and shades to be able to control the amount of light and glare that comes across those windows. There was a recent study that came out that said 59% of all the window surface in New York City is permanently covered with blinds, right? And that study then came out and said, well, we think you should just build with 59% less windows in New York City. But then the second conclusion they made is, but no one's going to listen to us because everybody knows windows are good for them.
Yeah.
So that's where we come in. The ability to control the condition of your window such that you can have the view all the time, and you're able to stay comfortable near the perimeter of the building visually and thermally, and bring just the right amount of natural light. If you look in your everyday things today, things like transition sunglasses, where when you go out in the sun, these things automatically tint based on the light level. The rear view mirror in your car is made of a material that changes its condition automatically. About 30% of cars built today have an electrochromic rear view mirror that you don't have to flip it, if you know what I mean. It will automatically dim. More recently, Boeing in their Dreamliner have a sunshade. It's not the window, but the shade that you use to control the view and the light outside is also electronically dimmable. So it's not far-fetched that you could have a building window that does that. In fact, for 50 years, people have been working on trying to bring this technology to scale and bring it into commercial level in buildings. And we are fortunate that we're the first company to be able to bring it to commercial scale. In fact, the gentleman who first invented this in 1964 is a technical advisor to the company, so we have a lot of connection to this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to demonstrate this live. So for those of you that can't see it, what you're looking at is this glass in its clear state, so you can see through it. It looks and feels much like a regular building window. What I have is my iPhone. I need to put in my password. And we have an app that connects wirelessly to your window, right?
So wait, so if I'm in my office or wherever and I want to tint all the windows in my house, I can do it over my phone?
You can do it from
100
China.
miles away?
You
Really?
can do it from anywhere. Except
Sweet.
This is not how we anticipate this will work primarily. Primarily, the way it'll work is we have connectivity in our offices. We have the ability to look at light level in any given direction of the building. We can have a weather sensor on the top of the building, and we do in our installations, that looks ahead as to what's coming. You can say, I want my front facade and the atrium to tint and clear a certain way versus my conference room versus my offices and common areas. So you can really program this such that it's able to intelligently and on demand change the condition of the building to your liking. So as the sun's coming up on the east, it's a bright day and it's in the summertime, you can tint it. And then as it's moving along the south, the building is continuously changing its condition to the needs of the occupants. So I have an app here. I'm going to push a button where this will start blinking, and I'm starting to tint this glass. I will pick it up and show you for those of you that can't directly look at it. It will gradually change its condition, much like the sunglasses do. And the idea is there are no moving parts. There's nothing that collects dust. There's nothing that makes noise. The idea is not to look at it, but to be able to look through it and enjoy that view and the natural light that comes across it.
Okay, while I got to interrupt you. While we're waiting for this to tint, I want to get you guys to start talking about why, if these inventions make so much sense, is it such a challenge to get the consumer to adopt them? Let's start with John. You've gone through so many iterations of so many products. What have you learned about the secret of getting people to buy these things?
I think one of the things is if any of you, and I'm sure all of you have at one point or another, watched these buy one, get one free, right? Order today, order now. The culture is almost conditioned to that quality level of product, and even though they suck in enough people, they still are very disappointing. And I think so what you have to do is, people do want a value, there's no question about it, but you have to give a product that is a quality product. It has to deliver on its promise. And what we try to do, and that's a very difficult thing to do, you've got to engineer it right, you have to source it right, you have to design it from the beginning right, you have to understand what the consumer, the customer is looking for and asking for. We put a lot of emphasis on the front end on consumer insights. We're listening to the customer. We're having lots of dialogue back and forth to try to get it right. And then we do a whole series of very step-by-step testing purposes and protocol to make sure what we're delivering is correct.
Tell us about what you did with Gojo, the Gojo company with Purell. My understanding is that a long time ago they started to try to introduce this hand sanitizer, but it wasn't selling. Why? And what did you change about it to make it sell?
Well, what you have to do is, again, listen to your customers. They were typically delivering it in much larger volumes, and the branding of it wasn't really clear as to what the device or what the material was doing for the customer. What we did was rebrand it, put it in smaller packages, get it into the hands of the consumer, do a testing protocol so they could use it, feel it, try it, and that ended up getting the...
And what about the bubbles inside?
The bubbles inside are just air bubbles. But it's part of the process of how the product is made.
Right.
And it could be engineered out, but it actually tested well. So the thought was leave it.
So people actually felt like because they saw the bubbles, there was something more effective to the product?
It is, but it does. It does actually contribute to the product.
Now, Chuck, what have you found with selling your technologies? How do you get people to buy something that they should be buying anyway?
Well, what most people probably don't realize is that Cree's been making commercial LED lighting for years and made the LEDs that go in lots of areas, street lights, things like that. And but it's actually been relatively slow. And what we realized is that we needed some catalyst to get people to think about this. And this is going to sound a little bit corny, but think about what was the symbol of a good idea. It was a light bulb.
Yeah.
So that's either your enemy or that's your friend. It's your enemy because that's generationally been imprinted in people's minds. A light bulb is already a good idea, and you want someone to think of that, no, it's actually not, we have a better one. So the first problem is even to get people to consider that they might want or need something better than a light bulb that was just, it's generationally assumed to be good enough. And when we did consumer testing, we found out something a little bit different, which is it's very hard to test a light bulb that uses less energy and doesn't burn out with consumers because they couldn't relate to it. So what we found is there were other LED bulbs before the Cree bulb, but nobody would buy them. And they wouldn't buy them because they couldn't relate to them. And it was as simple as we would put consumers in front of the products and say, what do you think? What do you buy? And they go, nothing. And we'd say, well, why not? There was actually too much variation, too much choice, and they just couldn't relate to it. And I'm going to say something that John knows 10 times, 1,000 times more than I do. When you're selling to a consumer, you have to make a connection in the most simple way. And the last thing most tech companies are good at is doing things simply, as we can explain, because there's a bunch of science. And it was the idea that if someone looked at it, would it become obvious that it was a light bulb? And then if it was obvious, the other thing was, it was at a price they would even try it. And it was those two things that started it, and but it was you really just couldn't test for it. You're essentially giving someone a new value proposition that they couldn't relate to, and so that was really the aha for us. And the innovation is to make it so simple that they would try it.
Right. How are you addressing that problem, Ro?
Yeah, first let me show for those of you that cannot see this. So it's tinted now. And I'll go ahead and clear it later. We're obviously newer in this than Chuck and John, and clearly we have a lot of learning. There's a lot of general themes you can take away from introducing, let's just say, hardware products. Software seems to behave a little differently than our worlds. But I think in our specific case, we first said, what are we trying to do? We're trying to put glass in buildings that's going to stay up for 50 or 100 years. So it's a highly consequential product. And I always talk about it internally when we think durability of products. On the one hand is you take your kid through the McDonald's drive-through and you pay $3 for a Happy Meal, and I can't believe they give you a little toy in a bag. You wind it up, most times it works, sometimes it may not. It's no big deal, you throw it in the trash anyway. On the other end is a nuclear-powered plant, right? So that's very serious from a reliability point of view. We always think of ourselves as closer to the nuclear plant than we are to the McDonald's toy. So let's start with that. So I think taking the painstaking level of care to make sure your product is inherently durable and is something that people in the buildings and construction industry can get behind was probably the single most important thing we've done as a company in our 6 years of existence. And then we're a 6-year-old company selling a product that's supposed to last 50 years. So this is why we have collaborations with companies like GE, companies like Corning, Seagate, and some of the type of investors that we have that really have this long-term orientation around it, because we're not selling a gadget that you throw away in a few years. So that's the starting point. And then really being able to convince people that, that's what that is. But the biggest thing you're doing is not make it durable. The biggest thing you're doing is to provide the greatest impact. So being able to not only create something that has that big impact, but being able to communicate it. And then, in our case, when you think about a solar panel, for example, when you think about an electric car, they're disruptive in the way they deliver the solution to the customer, but they're also disruptive in the channel. You have to build new charging stations. You have to train people to go up on roofs and put these solar panels with inverters and connect it to your home. We said we want to deploy a product in the same way glass is deployed today in the buildings industry. That's not easy to do because you're trying to create a disruptive effect while being non-disruptive to the channel, how it's sold, how it's installed. We put now over 60 projects across North America. We have another 30 under installation. We have some really large projects. And we've now, not only said this is our concept, but successfully deployed by using same glazing contractors, same general contractors, same low voltage technicians that already exist on job sites, by using the same people that have been working in these industries for a long time. If you can do that and do it successfully, you have a chance, not necessarily guaranteed, but you have a chance to scale up and deploy these technologies quickly into the marketplace.
That's great. Now, I want to switch gears a little bit here. Talk to me about the cultures of your companies. John, we'll start with you. How do you create this environment within Nottingham Spurk that just encourages creativity, fosters innovation, and how do you deal with, I don't know if failure is the right word, but for every successful product that you guys create, there's got to be dozens of things that you've tried and then you've just tossed away because it didn't have a future to it. So how does your company work through all that?
Interesting question. We always get asked that question. Failure. Where's your failures? What we try to do is, first of all, we have a very flat organization. We have about 70 associates, and one of the things we do to ensure to work failure out of our things is to get a lot of people in our group involved early on. We have, I mentioned earlier, insights. We have, in the insights that we have with the clients and with the consumer, the core consumer groups, we'll have our engineering groups, we'll have our design groups, we'll have our prototyping people. If it's IT involved or software, we'll have those involved. They're listening and hearing the same information that our designers are, for example. And it's amazing, between groups, they're talking, they're communicating, they're concept sketching, they're having dialogue between these groups. Therein lies a lot of the, taking out a lot of the problems that can creep into this. The other thing is we do soft launches. We'll do low volume prototypes or soft tooling and get it into the marketplace. We worked on a baby bottle a few years ago, and most companies, most big companies, love to roll out something nationally. They want to have it on the store shelf in San Diego at the same time it's in Buffalo or in Boston. It drives us crazy. It drives us from an innovation standpoint. There are lots of little things along the way that you learn each time. And when you roll out a product, it's not like software. You don't put baby bottle 2.0, 3.0. You can't do that. You can't pull it back and send a new one right away. It's there. And if it's problematic, you're going to be dealing with that for a long time. So what you try to do is, as we do, is these soft launches. We'll roll it out in a local area or in a very select market. We did with the bottle 2000. We sent it out to the moms. We got incredible feedback. Various ways to shape the bottle, the nipple, the closure, all that. We built that into the permanent tooling and rolled that out. One thing before we leave the subject of these two guys, we've been doing this for over 4 decades. Both of these technologies, we were talking in the green room, we've seen bad examples of over the years.
Okay.
The key, we don't invent anything new. I mean, everything's been done. It really has. You're really out there trying to
I hope that's not the case.
Improve it. Well, with new technologies, you can add new things, but the key is having entrepreneurs who really know how to make it work. That is the key. The technology follows what these guys do.
Oh, that's good. Now, Chuck, I know you have some thoughts on failure and whether that even exists in your organization. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, well, let me connect that actually with both the culture and the failure, because I think they're related. So, you know, Cree is, today it's 7,000 employees around the globe, but I was there in the 30-person days. And culture is really easy to build in a 30-person company. It's self-correcting. You basically either get it or you leave. And but as you scale that company is how do you build on that idea? And then what we discovered is you can have a culture, but you actually have to hire for the culture and you have to reinforce it. And so, and this leads to this idea of failure or not failure, because you know, essentially, in my view, most of corporate America is built around a very simple concept: limit risk to deliver a predictable result. And I would imagine most people in their careers have been rewarded that way. In a truly innovative company, what I've seen is it is about incentivizing people to take risk, to deliver unpredictable and incredible results. Now that sounds really good, but it leads to your point, which is sometimes those results don't look so good. You might say failure, and I think we talked earlier and I joked around and I said, we don't really have failures. We just have new data points that lead to new innovations. And you really have to have that mindset, and I think it's very hard to try to be both. I think one of the reasons John's company is so successful is he can bring a fundamentally different mindset that probably would be hard to act in the way his company acts within those larger organizations. Right. They're being measured so differently. And in our case, we're trying to scale up this innovative idea. And we made it to 7,000. Hopefully we make it to a lot more. But it's really a balance. But you have to have people that truly don't see failure. It's not even a word. It's just new information, and use that to invent the next thing.
Okay, Rao, that same question to you, and then we got to turn it over to some Q&A.
Yeah, I mean, we fail all the time. People outside see the successes. There's many contexts to it. I completely agree with Chuck. We don't think about it as failure. We think about it as learning. And that culture is a huge responsibility of the leadership, and especially the CEO, to continue to drive that. When something goes wrong, are you drilling down to learn, or are you drilling down to blame? Right? The other thing is when you hire people, Chuck talked about hiring. The most common question a lot of companies at early stage ask themselves is this person likely to make me successful? That's actually not the right question. The right question for an emerging company is, when I hire this person and I am in deep trouble, is this the person I want to have with me, alongside me in the trenches?
Why is that?
It's because you're going to get into trouble.
Okay.
You just don't know which way. So you can't even hire for that trouble. Right? You think you're hiring for this trouble and this expertise. You're going to fail in ways you haven't imagined, but let's agree, that's the opportunity. Right? It's those people that are looking for the predictable results is who you're beating in the marketplace. So you've got to assemble yourself people. Now, having said that, you can't just be dreamers. We were talking last night, I drink bucket loads of Kool-Aid every morning. You need that. You can't just be, all spreadsheets and rational stuff. Sometimes you have to go irrational. You have to demand for unexpected things and unreasonable things. But you also, along with that belief, you have to be grounded in the realities. So the hard part is, how do you get people that have the belief, the confidence to keep breaking through the brick walls, yet are able to say, okay, but there may be an easier way to deflect and go around it to achieve the same result. That's the hard part, where you're able to continually live in the real world of reality that's coming at you data-wise. You have to acknowledge the reality, and then you say, no, wait a minute. I don't want to live in that reality, because that's not how you change the world, and keep attempting those risky things that are going to give you failures, but learning. And that's the journey we go through every single day to make a successful product.